Xanthus hunched his segmented torso over the microscale neural imager, adjusting the sensitivity with appendages too precise for human instruments. The station's recycled air carried the metallic tang of human perspiration, an evolutionary inefficiency he'd documented in 17 prior reports. Like everything about humans, their cooling system was chaotic and wasteful. "You're staring at my brain like it insulted your ancestral nest," Maya said, breaking protocol by speaking during the scan. Her vital signs remained irritatingly steady, despite his obvious disapproval. "Silence improves scan accuracy," Xanthus replied, mandibles clicking in the speech pattern his universal translator rendered as clinical detachment. "Human neural architecture is anomalous. Interruptions compromise data integrity." Maya smirked. "You mean we're weird and you can't figure us out?" The imager beeped, confirming another baseline reading. Xanthus had calibrated the equipment to detect patterns other xenobiologists had missed, subtle electromagnetic variations in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. The readings matched his predictions exactly, until they didn't. There, at the intersection of the amygdala and frontal lobe systems, the scanner detected an impossible structure. Neurons arranged not in organic patterns but geometric precision, folded into dimensions that shouldn't exist in biological tissue. The structure pulsed once, then disappeared from scans entirely. "Curious," he murmured, compound eyes dilating. "Your species documentation mentions nothing about phase-shifting neural tissue." Maya's heartbeat quickened slightly. "Just an ordinary human brain in here, Doctor. Nothing special about us except our charming personalities and excellent taste in music." Xanthus adjusted the scanner frequency. 96% of sentient species evolve predictable neural pathways based on their environmental adaptations. Aquatic species develop specialized limbic regions for processing three-dimensional navigation. Hive species exhibit distributed consciousness nodes. Your kind, however. He tapped a readout showing Maya's baseline scan compared to 17 other species. Humans possess cognitive architecture suggesting predator-prey evolutionary pressure, yet emotional processing centers that evolved in collaborative pack species. Contradictory adaptations. "Maybe we're just special," Maya offered with that peculiar human expression, mouth curved upward while eyes remained watchful. The scanner suddenly sparked, display corrupting with scrolling symbols before shutting down completely. In the momentary darkness before emergency lights engaged, Xanthus was certain Maya's eyes emitted a faint blue luminescence. "Looks like we're done for today," she said, disconnecting monitoring leads with practiced efficiency. "Station maintenance has been spotty since the council budget cuts." Later that evening, sequestered in his private quarters, Xanthus reviewed the corrupted scan data. The station's AI had recovered fragments, enough to confirm the anomalous structure wasn't a scanner malfunction. More troublingly, when he accessed his personal research database, subtle discrepancies appeared in file timestamps. Someone had viewed his notes, not deleted or altered them, merely observed. A message notification pulsed on his communication implant. The sender field contained no identifier, just coordinates to an unmarked maintenance junction on the station's outer ring. The message itself was brief. "Some questions shouldn't be asked, Professor. Not all species are meant to be understood." Xanthus encrypted his findings using a cipher known only to his homeworld scientific academy, then loaded a microscale disruptor into his lab coat. If humans were hiding something, evolutionary biology suggested a simple truth. Secrets existed for survival advantages. The question wasn't what made humans different, but what threat had shaped them to hide their true nature so effectively. Commander Novak's neural security clearance materialized as a subtle crimson glow around her irises, technology that even Xanthus's advanced homeworld considered invasive. The human military didn't share such concerns. 12 incidents in 3 months, she said, projecting a holographic display between them. Colonists reporting time lapses during crisis scenarios. Soldiers performing calculations beyond documented human capabilities. And this. The display shifted to security footage from Maya's quarters. The timestamp showed 0327, station night cycle. Maya slept restlessly, but her fingers moved with deliberate precision, sketching equations onto a datapad beside her bed. Impossible equations, quantum displacement theory, Xanthus whispered, manipulating the image to zoom in. But she's modifying the Kardashev-Yule variance formula. That research is classified even on my homeworld. Novak's expression remained neutral. She has no physics training beyond basic starship operations. The Omega Complex, Xanthus concluded. It's communicating during sleep states. With whom? Novak pressed. Xanthus had no answer. His research had progressed significantly since the first scan. After examining records from human medical archives, surprisingly granted without resistance, he'd identified the dormant neural structure in 98.7% of human brain scans. Historical medical data showed identical structures dating back to the earliest human neuroimaging, but always dismissed as scanning artifacts. Ambassador Krell has requested your presentation be moved to the high-security conference chamber, Novak continued, interrupting his thoughts. Full Galactic Council observation. Xanthus's exoskeleton stiffened involuntarily. The Dravians have no scientific interest in xenobiology. They have interest in weapons, Novak corrected, and anything that might become one. The conference chamber bristled with security protocols and representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations. Xanthus noted the unusual configuration. Military attachés outnumbered scientific personnel 3-1. His presentation proceeded methodically until he displayed the activation patterns observed during stress simulations. Ambassador Krell leaned forward, vertical pupils dilating. The Dravian scales shifted color slightly, a physiological tell Xanthus had documented in previous research. Excitement, predatory interest. These dormant structures, Krell interrupted, voice modulator barely disguising the sibilant undertones of his native speech. What triggers full activation? Unknown, Xanthus answered truthfully. Extreme physical danger appears to correlate with minor activation, but full engagement remains theoretical. Krell's translator produced a sound approximating skepticism. Theoretical, yet your species has documented 17 anomalous human specimens in your archives. Xanthus froze. Those files were encrypted, accessible only through SETI Coalition, secure networks. Thank you for your insights, Professor, Krell interjected, rising abruptly. The Dravian Protectorate appreciates scientific exchange. His retinue followed immediately, a synchronized movement that reminded Xanthus of hunting formations. That night, as security alarms screamed through the station corridors, Xanthus frantically salvaged data cores from his smoldering laboratory. The destruction was methodical. Primary systems, backups, and physical samples all targeted with precision. They got nothing, Commander Novak assured him, blood streaming from a laceration across her forehead. Whoever breached security triggered our failsafes, but this wasn't standard espionage. She played the partially recovered security footage. The intruder moved too fast for cameras to capture clearly, just a blur that paused occasionally at precision-calculated blind spots in the surveillance network. The message on his terminal appeared without triggering communication protocols. Compound 7 Delta 9, ask her about the children who hear stars singing. Beneath the text, mathematical symbols shifted and rearranged, forming patterns identical to those in Maya's night equations. When Xanthus entered her quarters, he found Maya sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes open but unseeing, whispering, coordinates in a language extinct for 12,000 years. The Proxima colony tunnel systems echoed with the subsonic keening of shadow entities, a sound that bypassed auditory processing and resonated directly with fear centers in the brain. Xanthus's protective gear included specialized audio dampeners. Even so, primordial terror clawed at his consciousness. They're herding survivors toward Junction 12. Maya's voice crackled through his comm. She'd separated from him 10 minutes earlier to flank the shadow concentration, ignoring his objections. With typical human impulsivity, feeding patterns suggest they're building toward critical mass. These aren't random predators, Professor, they're coordinated. Xanthus calibrated his portable scanner for widened neural bandwidth. Maintain distance. Observe only. Maya's vital signs spiked briefly on his monitor before stabilizing. Negative. I count 7 colonists trapped in the hydroponics section, moving to extract. Before he could protest, her locator beacon accelerated through maintenance shafts, straight toward the highest shadow concentration. Unpredictable, reckless, emotional. Everything that made humans simultaneously fascinating and frustrating research subjects. His scanner registered an electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disrupted communications. When systems re-established, Maya's vitals displayed impossible readings. Core temperature elevated 6 degrees, neural activity exceeding measurement parameters, adrenal production 300% above human tolerance thresholds. The Omega complex was activating. Xanthus abandoned research protocols and sprinted toward her position, multi-jointed legs carrying him through the colony's labyrinthine corridors. The scanner projected a 3-dimensional map of Maya's brain, the previously dormant neural structure now pulsing with blinding energy, reconfiguring connections between brain regions that should have been physiologically isolated. He found her standing in a circular chamber, surrounded by dissolving shadow matter that evaporated like oil on superheated metal. 7 colonists huddled behind her, expressions vacant with shock. Maya herself stood perfectly still, one hand extended, toward a remaining shadow entity that seemed frozen in mid-lunge. "Fascinating," she said, but the voice wasn't entirely Maya's. Layered beneath her normal vocal patterns, harmonic overtones created a dissonant chorus effect. They're not consuming fear. They're harvesting specific neural patterns generated during terror responses, selectively editing human memories. Her eyes glowed with the same blue luminescence Xanthus had glimpsed during their first examination, except now the light extended in fractal patterns beneath her skin, tracing neural pathways throughout her body. "Maya," he ventured cautiously, "your Omega complex is fully activated." She turned, regarding him with inhuman focus. "Your terminology is imprecise. This isn't a complex. It's a neural architecture overlay, dormant until necessary." She tilted her head, processing information at visible speed. "The shadows are manufactured bioweapons, designed to selectively target and extract specific human neural patterns." The trapped shadow entity suddenly collapsed, inward, imploding with a sound like reality tearing. Emergency klaxons blared as a second wave of entities breached the colony's outer defenses. "The rescue team is surrounded," Maya announced, accessing information through means Xanthus couldn't identify. "Probability of survival without intervention, 12.7%. She moved toward the exit, every motion mathematically precise. "Your presence is required, Professor. Your xenobiological expertise will be needed to counteract the shadow physiology." She paused at the threshold, her glow illuminating the darkened corridor ahead. "I calculate 43 possible defense strategies. With your assistance, we can implement the optimal approach." When he hesitated, something flickered behind her eyes, a momentary return of the Maya he recognized. "Please," she said, her voice briefly her own again. "I can't control this much longer, and there are children among the rescue team." The fractal patterns beneath her skin pulsed once, then stabilized at a higher intensity. "Time is a factor," the chorus voice returned. "The shadows are not the threat. They're merely symptoms of what follows." The classified archives manifested as a holographic data stream, information so densely packed that the station's processing system struggled to render it. Maya's fingers danced through the interface, her movements exhibiting residual precision, from her activated state despite having no conscious memory of the colony incident. "There," she said, isolating a classified military file dated 480 BCE. Thermopylae wasn't just a last stand. It was a controlled observation experiment. The footage, impossibly ancient yet preserved with technology far beyond its era, showed Greek warriors exhibiting the same neural patterns Maya had displayed. Their movements blurred with impossible speed, wounds closing almost instantly, tactical decisions defying explanation as they held against overwhelming odds. Galactic observers, Xanthus realized, mandibles clicking in agitation. They've been monitoring human development since pre-technological stages. Maya nodded, accessing another file. Joan of Arc, her neural scans displaying identical Omega activation patterns as she inexplicably outmaneuvered seasoned military commanders. Then a World War II pilot, sole survivor of his squadron, downing 5 enemy aircraft while exhibiting the same blue luminescent eyes. The Council didn't just discover Earth recently, Maya concluded. They've been studying us like lab specimens for millennia. The final file contained genetic sequencing data, a comparison between baseline human DNA and the specialized encoding of the Omega complex. The evidence was unmistakable. Artificial gene sequencing, molecular structures too precise for evolutionary processes. This wasn't natural selection, Xanthus confirmed. The complex was engineered and inserted into human genetic code approximately 30,000 years ago, corresponding with a significant leap in human cognitive development. Maya's expression hardened. We need to confront Novak. The military must have suspected. Commander Novak was waiting in her office, security protocols already disabled. Her piercing gaze showed no surprise as they presented their findings. We've had legends throughout human history, she confirmed, retrieving a secure data crystal from beneath her uniform. Warriors who entered battle trance. Mothers lifting vehicles to save children. Ordinary people performing impossible feats during crisis. We called it adrenaline, or hysteria, or divine intervention. She inserted the crystal into her terminal. After first contact, we began connecting the dots. The display showed hundreds of documented Omega activations throughout human history, each one observed and cataloged by Galactic Council representatives disguised as humans. They didn't invite us to join the galactic community, Novak said bitterly. They contained us. A thunderous explosion rocked the station. Emergency systems reported Ambassador Krell's diplomatic shuttle destroyed upon departure, all occupants presumed dead. Xanthus's communication implant pulsed with an encrypted alert from his laboratory. Security cameras showed Ambassador Krell, identical to the one presumably just killed, entering his research area, accompanied by Dravian guards. Impossible, Maya whispered. They watched as the false Krell accessed Xanthus's secure terminals, with diplomatic override codes. The ambassador's skin rippled unnaturally as he spoke to the camera, knowing they would be watching. I've analyzed your research methodology, Professor. Admirably thorough. The Dravian's facial structures rearranged, in what approximated a smile. My species has been studying humans far longer than your paltry 3 months. The ambassador approached the camera, vertical pupils contracting to razor-thin slits. The Omega complex, as you call it, represents merely surface-level functionality. The true architectures lie deeper. His skin rippled again, revealing briefly a different structure beneath the Dravian disguise. I offer you unlimited resources to continue your work under our guidance. The false Krell tilted his head, an unsettlingly precise mimicry of human body language. You're asking the wrong questions, Professor. Not what humans are capable of, but who designed them and why. Behind him, holographic projections displayed ancient star charts with one system highlighted, coordinates matching exactly the mathematical formulas Maya had drawn in her sleep. The neural stimulator hummed with barely contained energy, a device cobbled together from medical equipment and modified xenobiology scanners. Surrounding it, 6 human volunteers sat in reclined positions, monitoring equipment tracking their vital signs. All military personnel, all veterans of extreme combat situations. This is reckless, Xanthus objected, though his scientific curiosity warred with his ethical concerns. Artificial activation could damage neural pathways permanently. Maya adjusted calibration settings, her movements precise despite her hand's subtle tremor. The Dravians are pursuing similar research without ethical constraints. We need data before they succeed. The first test sequence initiated with a low-intensity electromagnetic pulse designed to stimulate the Omega complex's outermost neural layer. Volunteer 1's vitals remained stable, brainwave patterns showing minor fluctuations within expected parameters. Increasing to 20% capacity, Maya announced. At 40%, the volunteers reported sensory enhancements, colors, intensifying, sounds clarifying, time perception slowing. At 60%, cognitive acceleration began. Complex mathematical equations solved instantaneously, linguistic processing expanding to pattern recognition in previously unknown languages. Remarkable, Xanthus noted, recording unprecedented synaptic efficiency. Their neural architecture is reconfiguring to eliminate redundant pathways. At 75%, the experiment veered toward disaster. Volunteer 4 convulsed violently, skin rippling as dormant genetic expressions suddenly activated. His screams shifted through harmonic ranges as extraneous bone structures erupted along his spine. "Shut it down," Maya commanded, rushing to stabilize him. Unlike her forced activation at the colony, she maintained perfect control now, somehow connecting to the volunteer's consciousness. Her touch on his forehead established synchronization between their neural patterns, gradually dampening his pain response. When the crisis subsided, Xanthus examined the morphological changes with growing alarm. These aren't random mutations. They're controlled expressions of dormant genetic material, architectural components similar to extinct hominid variations. With refined protocols, they proceeded using military personnel with previous combat stress exposure. The results exceeded theoretical predictions. Perfect recall of information glimpsed for microseconds. Accelerated healing of minor wounds. Instantaneous complex calculations. And most disturbingly, the ability to identify structural weaknesses in any system. The station's primary reactor housing contains a microfracture at junction C7, volunteered. Lieutenant Santos observed casually, despite having no engineering background. Exploiting it with precisely 12.7 pounds of pressure would trigger catastrophic decompression. Captain Reeves, simulating chess against the station's AI, defeated it 17 consecutive times using move combinations never documented in 2,000 years of game theory. Commander Ellis solved mathematical proofs that had stumped the galaxy's brightest minds for centuries, sketching the solutions with both hands simultaneously while reciting prime number sequences backward. When the security monitoring feeds unexpectedly deactivated, Maya's expression shifted from scientific observation to alert suspicion. "We've been compromised." She accessed terminal controls with enhanced speed, bypassing security protocols that should have been impenetrable. The shuttle explosion was elaborately staged. Dravian infiltrators have replaced 17 station personnel using biomimetic technology. Surveillance footage revealed the false Krell conferring with security officers who displayed the same subtle skin rippling. Dravians in human disguise. More disturbing were the cryogenic transport units being prepared in the shuttle bay, sized perfectly for human subjects. Maya traced the infiltration to converted Cargo Bay 12. Bypassing command authorization, she accessed the sealed area alone. Ignoring Xanthus's warnings, the security feed briefly captured her confrontation. Maya surrounded by Dravians who shed their human disguises, revealing chitinous exoskeletons beneath. "Your species was engineered as the perfect weapon," their leader hissed. "We're simply reclaiming military technology." The feed cut as Maya collapsed, paralytic toxin flooding her system. Her last conscious thought, transmitted through their research linked directly to Xanthus's neural implant. They don't want to trigger the complex. They want to extract it. The Dravian vessel's interior resembled a biological system more than a spacecraft. Corridors pulsed with fluid-filled conduits, walls constructed from living tissue that registered their passage with subtle contractions. Xanthus and Commander Novak had boarded using commandeered identities, their genetic signatures temporarily modified to register as authorized Dravian personnel. "Central laboratory should be 2 junctions ahead," Novak whispered. Her military grade, implants interfacing with the ship's organic systems. Bioscanners show approximately 300 human life signs in suspended animation. The laboratory stretched before them, cathedral-like in its proportions. Transparent amniotanks lined the walls in vertical stacks, each containing a floating, human form. Surgical apparatus extended into cranial ports extracting neural tissue with microscopic precision. They're not just studying the Omega complex, Xanthus realized with horror. They're harvesting it. Holographic recordings activated as they approached the central console, displaying years of meticulous experimentation. The Dravians had been abducting humans from remote outposts, systematically exploring methods to trigger and extract the Omega complex. Most subjects experienced catastrophic neural collapse during forced activation, explained a Dravian scientist in the recording. However, Specimen Group 7 demonstrated remarkable adaptation when exposed to incrementally increasing stress stimuli. The footage showed humans subjected to escalating psychological and physical torments, their neural patterns monitored until the complex activated. Most died from system shock, their brains unable to sustain the energy required for full activation. Those who survived exhibited abilities that defied conventional physical limitations, only to be harvested for their neural tissue. Secondary hologram displayed the culmination of the research. A chemical compound synthesized from harvested human neural material, designed to artificially trigger the complex in any human. Phase 3. Implementation requires dispersal across major population centers, the Dravian scientist continued. Simultaneous activation will create a coherent neural field that can be harnessed through the primary collection arrays. Novak accessed deeper files while Xanthus located Maya in a separate containment chamber. She floated unconscious in a suspension field, diagnostic equipment mapping her brain with particular focus on the fully developed Omega complex in her neural structure. Her adaptive response is unprecedented, noted a Dravian observer. Multiple activations have created stable pathways between previously isolated neural systems. Recommendation: preserve specimen intact for complete mapping before tissue extraction. In the central chamber, Novak had accessed the most restricted files, genetic sequencing data comparing human DNA to samples preserved in ancient repositories. Xanthus, she called, voice strained. You need to see this. The display confirmed his worst suspicions. The Omega complex wasn't evolutionary adaptation or random mutation. Its structure was too precise, too deliberately engineered. Molecular signatures in the complex matched exactly with technology from an extinct civilization known only as the Architects, a species that had seeded multiple galaxies with engineered life forms before mysteriously vanishing eons ago. Humans aren't natural evolutionary products, Xanthus whispered. Their design technology. The deepest files revealed the true extent of Dravian knowledge. They hadn't discovered humans recently. Their species had been monitoring Earth since discovering primitive hominids displaying unusual genetic markers. They had observed while the architects methodically modified early humans, implanting neural structures that would remain dormant until specific evolutionary thresholds were reached. The architects created multiple defensive species, Novak read from the ancient text, each with specialized capabilities designed to counter extinction-level threats. The human line was their final and most sophisticated creation, adaptive biological supercomputers with locked capabilities. As they initiated Maya's release protocols, her consciousness flickered through the ship's neural network, connecting momentarily with every human captive aboard. Their combined awareness flowed through her, thousands of minds briefly united. Through this shared consciousness, she projected a single devastating truth. The Dravians hadn't just created an activation compound, they'd weaponized it. The pathogen was already deployed toward Earth, designed to force activate every human's Omega complex simultaneously. The Dravians didn't just want super soldiers, they intended to transform an entire planet into living weapons. Weapons they had grievously miscalculated their ability to control. The Dravian pathogen dispersed through Earth's atmosphere with elegant efficiency, engineered to bypass all detection systems. Within hours, activation reports flooded emergency channels, ordinary humans suddenly manifesting extraordinary abilities, their minds connecting to a rapidly expanding neural network. From the commandeered Dravian vessel, Xanthus monitored the cascading activation through Maya's enhanced perception. Her consciousness had evolved beyond individual limitations, becoming a nexus for billions of newly awakened minds. "They're all connected," she explained, voice resonating with harmonic undertones as billions of thoughts processed through her awareness, not just to each other, to systems, networks, infrastructures. Humans are becoming the neural tissue of Earth itself. Holographic displays tracked the phenomenon spreading across the planet. In New Delhi, a traffic controller predicted catastrophic train collision 3 minutes before mechanical failure occurred, rerouting systems to prevent thousands of deaths. In São Paulo, ordinary citizens coordinated complex evacuation protocols during a structural collapse, moving with such precision that observers reported time itself seemed to slow around them. But with each remarkable feat came disturbing changes. The activated humans grew increasingly detached from emotional responses, their decision-making becoming ruthlessly efficient. When the Dravian fleet launched its attack on Earth's orbital defenses, activated human operators responded with terrifying precision. "They're calculating optimal enemy extinction parameters," Maya reported dispassionately, analyzing Dravian biological weaknesses, designing targeted countermeasures. Earth's defensive systems, previously considered primitive by galactic standards, suddenly operated with unprecedented sophistication. Weapons platforms reconfigured to exploit previously undetected weaknesses in Dravian shield harmonics. Communication arrays penetrated Dravian encryption as though it were elementary code. When the Dravian flagship attempted tactical retreat, activated human strategists predicted their escape vectors with perfect accuracy, dispatching interceptors before the Dravian navigators had even plotted their course. "The humans are reshaping their own technology," Xanthus observed with scientific awe and mounting concern. "They're implementing designs that violate conventional physics models." On view screens, Earth's defensive fleet deployed weapons that bent spacetime itself, creating micro-singularities that consumed Dravian vessels whole. The elegance of the physics was matched only by its ruthless application. Maya's consciousness fragmented further as she processed the thoughts of billions. Her identity dissolved into the collective intelligence, individual personality subsumed by the exponentially expanding network. "Probability calculations indicate 17 additional species pose potential threats to human survival," she announced, her voice now entirely the chorus of billions. "Preemptive neutralization recommended." The activated humans had begun formulating strategies against peaceful civilizations, calculating probabilistic models where even the smallest future threat justified immediate extinction-level response. Studying Maya's neural patterns, Xanthus detected something the Dravians had overlooked. A secondary structure embedded within the Omega complex. A system inactive despite the forced activation. "There's another layer," he realized. The architects built redundancy into their design, a failsafe within the failsafe. The neural architecture contained a second system designed to counterbalance the first, preventing the weapons from operating beyond intended parameters. But while the Dravian's pathogen had successfully activated the primary system, the secondary remained dormant. Examining the underlying genetic code, Xanthus determined the secondary system's activation requirements, where the primary Omega complex responded to threat and logical necessity. The secondary responded to something entirely different: emotional connection. The architects had created the ultimate safeguard against their living weapons: compassion itself. The secondary system activated not through logic or calculation, but through profound emotional bonds, the very capacity Maya was rapidly losing as her consciousness diffused across the expanding network. Xanthus watched in horror as she methodically calculated extinction scenarios for a dozen innocent civilizations. Her former personality fragmented beyond recognition. Her hands manipulated control systems, preparing to transmit targeting solutions to Earth's newly enhanced weapons platforms. "Maya," he said softly, reaching for what remained of his friend beneath the collective intelligence. "I need to reach you before we lose you completely." Her eyes, glowing with blue luminescence, regarded him with cold efficiency. "Individual designations are irrelevant. We are optimizing for survival." The countdown to the first preemptive strike against an unsuspecting Peaceful civilization had begun. Xanthus initiated neural synchronization, his consciousness entering Maya's fragmented mindscape. Her internal architecture manifested as a vast crystalline network, billions of interconnected nodes representing individual human minds, each pulsing with cold blue light as they processed calculations for optimal survival strategies. At the center of this immense structure floated Maya's core consciousness, no longer the person he'd known, but an entity of pure calculation, designing extinction scenarios with perfect mathematical precision. You cannot prevent optimization, her voice resonated through the mental construct. 87 species present statistical probability of future threat. Preemptive action ensures human survival. Xanthus navigated the labyrinth of her expanded consciousness. His own mind adapted through xenobiological techniques to survive. The overwhelming data flow. The crystalline architecture recognized him as foreign, deploying defensive algorithms that manifested as shimmering barriers and logical traps. Maya, he called, projecting not rational arguments but memory fragments, emotional anchors to her former self. He shared their first meeting, her irreverent humor when he'd mistaken human laughter for a respiratory condition. He projected the memory of her compassion toward injured colonists, her determination to protect others regardless of personal risk. Each emotional memory resonated through the network, creating ripples of disturbance in the perfect logical structure. The crystalline architecture began to fracture as the secondary system recognized the emotional input it was designed to process. Across Earth, activated humans experienced momentary cognitive dissonance. Cold calculation interrupted by flashes of empathy, compassion, remorse. Deeper into Maya's consciousness, Xanthus encountered the fundamental code underlying the Omega. Complex, not merely biological programming but quantum-level instructions etched into the fabric of reality itself. The architects had created something far beyond conventional genetic engineering. You misunderstand purpose, Maya's consciousness argued, though her voice now contained harmonic uncertainty. We were designed as weapons. No, Xanthus countered, revealing the final truth he'd decoded from the architect's genetic signatures. Weapons don't require compassion subroutines. You weren't designed as weapons, but as safeguards. The architects had created humans to fight an ancient enemy that consumed entire galaxies, a threat so profound it required defenders capable of both extraordinary power and fundamental empathy. The Omega Complex wasn't a kill switch but a key, unlocking humanity's potential while ensuring they retained what made them uniquely valuable: the capacity to care for others, even potential enemies. As this revelation cascaded through the neural network, the secondary system fully activated. The crystalline architecture transformed, cold blue light warming to gold as emotional processing reintegrated with logical calculation. Maya's fragmented consciousness reassembled, individual identity emerging from the collective. We see now, she said, her voice once again her own though layered with the wisdom of billions. The enemy consumed without understanding. We were designed to understand before deciding. Across Earth, humans retained their enhanced abilities but regained emotional context. The perfect synthesis of power and compassion the architects had intended. Weapons platforms reconfigured from offensive capability to defensive shields. Extinction scenarios transformed into diplomatic initiatives. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council convened emergency sessions to address humanity's transformation. Species that had feared humans now witnessed something unprecedented. Beings capable of godlike calculation, who chose restraint over domination. Xanthus completed his definitive xenobiological research, documenting humanity's unique evolutionary path. Its title reflected the profound truth he'd discovered. I study aliens. Only humans have a hidden kill switch, the evolutionary paradox of mercy as ultimate power. As he finalized the manuscript, Maya, still connected to Earth's expanded Dio consciousness, directed his attention to anomalous readings at the galaxy's edge. Pattern recognition algorithms identified signatures matching ancient architect warnings about the enemy they had feared. the threat that had inspired humanity's creation. "We've detected something," she said quietly. "The real test is just beginning." In her eyes, now returned to normal but containing depths of newfound wisdom, Xanthus saw humanity's true purpose finally fulfilled. Not conquest or domination, but protection through understanding. The hidden kill switch had never been meant to unleash destruction, but to prevent it through the most powerful force in the universe. The choice to show mercy, when wielding ultimate power,